Hey everyone, this is Amber Key, and you're listening to a Bright Idea podcast, a show where I sit down with entrepreneurs to hear about the aha moments that launched their businesses. On this week's episode, we're joined by Chelse Prejean, founder of Smoky Mmmeats, a plant-based meat company based in Washington, D.C. Smoky Mmmeats believes that when it comes to feeding and providing a more sustainable future, we don't have to sacrifice the quality. Our positive choices, no matter how small, can have a huge impact on our health, our local communities, and our planet. Smoky Mmmeats provides their customers with nourishing plant-based meats that not only have natural ingredients and a sustainable packaging, but the best tasting quality plant-based meats possible. If you were to ask Chelse if she'd work in the plant-based food industry around 10 years ago, she would have said no. Growing up, Chelse was into the sciences. She's a chemical engineer by trade, and while working in the field, discovered she had a newfound passion not only for making plant-based food, but selling the foods to a customer. In 2021, she decided she'd leave the engineering field and start Smoky Mmmeats full-time. Chelse grew up on the outskirts of Houston, Texas, and lived a very stereotypical country life. Her father was a cowboy, and she spent many days attending rodeos or going to family farms where they not only owned livestock like chickens, pigs, cows, and horses, but also hunted what they ate. While plant-based, Chelse still missed the classic Texas recipes she grew up with, so as an engineer, she saw a problem and began to solve it, but this time, right in her kitchen. She created a plant-based version of the animal proteins that her Texas cowboy father taught her how to smoke and grill growing up.
So everything that my dad would hunt, he would barbecue in some capacity. So he's kind of a legend in the family for smoking and grilling everything. Big family events like Thanksgiving's coming up, and he would make a smoked turkey every Thanksgiving for everyone. And kind of a part of the celebration. And then, my mom actually learned how to barbecue from him, and she put her own little spin on it also. And they're both from Louisiana originally, but my mom embraces more of her like New Orleans culture. So you put both of those things together, and that's kind of the culture and the food that I grew up with. And it really, really impacted kind of how I think about food and how I think about cuisine. But it's just like barbecue's like a religion where I'm from. We have whole long conversations about how long to smoke things, how long to grill things.
Yeah.
It was just a big part of the culture.
Yeah. I was in Texas, I want to say last year around this time, and one thing that I really enjoyed was how rich the flavors were, and like you're saying, that intersection between the Mexican food and then American food with all of the meats and the sauces and stuff, which kind of is funny. It's kind of a complete opposite from being plant-based. And I think earlier you had mentioned growing up that you have a love for animals and that you wanted to be a vet. How would your parents have described you? How did they describe you as a child, and what kind of led you into this plant-based diet?
Yeah, so I was always a lover of animals. But that kind of connection between, seeing an animal as something on my plate and seeing an animal, a beautiful cow that I would drive by, it was always something I kind of internally struggled with. And I think a lot of people just kind of disassociate the two, right?
Yeah.
And I think for me, there's always this funny story. My sister saw my dad bring home a deer that he shot, and the movie Bambi was really big at the time. And she was just so upset with him, like, you killed Bambi's mom. And I always kind of laughed at that story, but it kind of, looking back now, we all kind of start off with some sort of empathy for animals. As humans, we all have empathy. Um, so it's programming that takes us away from that, right? You see burgers on TV, you see steaks at Outback Steakhouse. Um, so I kind of made the journey back to that sort of childlike understanding life as being life. And I was just happened to be on a work trip, going to chemical plants and talking to them about, sustainability and making sure that we operate safely. But in the evenings, I have a lot of downtime. So I found this video about why I went vegan. I had no interest in going vegan at the time. This was not something that I was even curious about. I didn't even want to watch this video, but I thought, let me just see, kind of curious about it. So I watched maybe like 5 minutes of the video, and the woman in the video mentioned this documentary, Earthlings. And I thought, oh God, I don't want to watch, a documentary about factory farming or any of those things. A lot of people, you just don't want to know. You don't want to, you want to keep that dissociation. So I was like, man, maybe I'll watch just a little bit of it just so I can understand kind of what led the woman to this conclusion. Not thinking at all that it would have any impact on me and my ideology and the way I saw the world. But after I started to understand, that being that I was putting on my plate every single day was sentient. They have the same level of intelligence as cats and dogs. And I have a dog, and I see my dog run off and get scared sometimes. I see him, understanding and empathizing with my emotional state. And if you have a pet at home, for me, that's when the disassociation stopped. I could no longer see that animal that was on my plate different than I saw the animal that was cuddling up next to me in my bed. And watching and understanding how factory farming impacts the planet as well. Like I mentioned, I was going to facilities talking to them about being more sustainable. I would be a hypocrite to also be contributing to that with how much factory farming contributes to the release of methane gas and contributes to global climate change.
I love that you shared that background with me, and I think that it does kind of tie it all together. Because at first I was like, how could you grow up, on a farm where you see animals all the time and you're eating meat all the time, and you see it every day. So how do you go from that to plant based? But I think that it makes total sense when you were speaking about some of the disassociation. I met you we were at an event here in DC, and we live in the city. Like we walk into a grocery store, we go and we get our meat, and we're back home cooking it and we eat it. But I think that the story about your sister is a very powerful one, and it makes so much sense why that was your decision to stop eating meat. I am curious though, how were you able to kind of wean yourself off of meat, having been exposed to it all of this time in your life?
Well, for me, the next morning, I surprised myself, after, watching the documentary a little bit. The next morning, I looked at the sausage and the bacon at breakfast, and I couldn't do it. That was the first time that I stopped eating beef, and then I ate chicken for a little while. And then after a while, I stopped eating chicken, dairy, and eggs. At sometimes you travel to places where there's just it's just impossible to eat vegan. And I watched, I got guidance from other people, and it was just like, be easy on yourself. Don't, if it's between, eating, period, and, having something animal based, or something vegetarian, that's okay. So I gave myself some grace for a long time there, especially until I figured out how to cook vegan food. But it was a process, and fish I phased out slowly. But it was a process. I mean, the Gulf Coast is also really big for seafood. We had crawfish boils, everything. Right. Just a big part of the culture there. So it was just kind of let me figure out how I'm going to still embrace the culture that I grew up with. But it was a slow transition. But really, it was getting back to learning how to cook and learning how to make my own food.
I want to make a pivot though into your career. First of all, I find your story so interesting. For one, growing up where you grew up, and then also you're trained as a chemical engineer. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah. Can you kind of take me through that? How did you know that becoming a chemical engineer was what you wanted to do in a career?
So I've always been really interested in chemistry from a very young age. I remember watching, I don't know if how popular the show was. Pepper Ann, she was a nerd. She was like in the same grade as me, and she would always do science experiments. I just loved all the nerdy characters on TV shows.
Yeah.
And I was always like, I'm going to be a scientist one day. My mom would always remind me of that every time. I was like, yeah, I don't know, maybe I'll be a dancer or something. She's like, yeah, but you said you wanted to be a scientist. I'm like, yeah, she's right. So I got into high school. I had this chemistry teacher who, I think I got like the highest grade in chemistry, AP chemistry that year. And she said, have you ever thought about being a chemical engineer? And I was kind of like, well, what is that? She kind of explained to me about, chemical production on a larger scale. And chemical engineers are assist with the larger production of chemical manufacturing. And it's a huge industry in Houston. So, and it's also one of the highest paid majors out of college, which definitely helps.
Yeah.
So
that's enticing.
Right, exactly. And I've always wanted to, I grew up a single parent household. So it was very important for me to be able to make a salary that would be able to support myself and my family. So that was kind of my motivation for definitely being a chemical engineer, kind of met all the things that I wanted to do in life, science, but also making sure that we could have a sustainable future financially.
Right. And what was it chemical engineering? There's different. It's broad. There's a lot of different things that you can focus on within that industry. What was sort of your focus?
So my focus was process safety engineering, which is specifically geared towards making sure that you have safe manufacturing or not releasing things to the planet. When I was in high school, BP Texas explosion happened just not too far away from where I lived. And I remember seeing that on the news. At the time, I didn't know I wanted to go into process safety engineering, but that always had an impact on me. I just happened to meet a process safety engineer right when I was in college, and he explained a lot of the things about how chemical manufacturing can impact the planet and also impact communities if there is chemical releases. So that was kind of the section that I fell into.
Did you have any focus on how chemicals affected our food, and did you work on enhancing food production at all?
Not necessarily. Just from, manufacturing being focused. I was more working with things that went into plastics or additives that went into all different types of manufacturing, things that went into wind energy. But occasionally we would be at a food manufacturing facility, making sure that those just operated safely. But never really got into food safety as far as like making sure people are eating or consuming food, or what are the ingredients to make sure that those are safe. I've never been part of that area.
How long were you working as a chemical engineer?
10 years.
Okay. And did you enjoy it?
At first, for the most part, it was like a dream come true. I mean, the first time I went to a chemical plant, I was working at a chemical plant every single day. It was like a dream come true. I saw the big, most people are not interested in that stuff, but I saw the big tanks and I saw the big reactors, and I just felt like I made it, like I did what I wanted to do. But for a female, especially a woman of color, it's extremely stifling. It was for me, at least. I don't know if it's for other people. I found it extremely stifling. Everything. There's this song Taylor Swift has. She says, when everyone believes you, like, what's that like? It's constantly having to prove myself, constantly having to get somebody to co-sign what I'm saying. You know, it was just a constant battle. And then then I just go, well, do whatever you want to do. If you don't listen to me, that's fine. Then you get it on the other hand, why didn't you make sure that this person did what they were supposed to do? And it's like, but if you do that, then you call it difficult. It's always this fine line that women, especially women of color, have to walk between being seen as confrontational and just trying to do your job.
Right.
So it was just a lot of that, and it was just extremely exhausting at some point. What I really wanted to do wasn't the focus anymore. It was all of the, microaggressions and all those things.
Were you one of the only African American females in your, like at your job?
Yeah, the only. I've never worked with another engineer of another Black engineer. I don't believe I've ever worked with another Black female engineer.
And that's extremely isolating too.
Yes,
Yeah.
for sure. Yeah. I'd at times have, other women engineers, they had similar experiences. But that specific diaspora of having somebody to connect with,
Yeah.
it just never happened.
Was there a turning point that made you, leave the industry altogether?
Yeah, for sure. I was in this situation where, there's always in industries like this, you do have at times what's called the woman on top kind of syndrome, and women who do make it to a certain point, they want to stomp at other women who are potentially going to get up to a certain place. So I had a corporate job, everybody's probably dream job. I was traveling all over the world, going to chemical plants. And I asked one of my colleagues who had been in the company longer than I have, what can you give me some tips on how to interact with people since you know everybody. And I think I was 28 at the time. And she said, you just don't know how to do your job because you're too young to be able to do it effectively. And I said, wow, that's not really what I asked. I was asking for, some help and some guidance. That just, kind of makes me feel like, you feel like I'm not qualified to do my job. But that I just kind of brushed it off. But the next couple of interactions with her just got more antagonistic, and she complained that I wasn't doing what she said, but she wasn't my manager. So a lot of that type of stuff, just little digs here and there. complaining to my manager about me. And this is something that unfortunately happens quite a bit when you have very male dominated industries. The only other women who will be around will be the ones who try to take you out. And I was seeing a coach. They sent me to a coach to be able to not have so many antagonistic interactions. I've never been called antagonistic before in my life. Before this, but I was being called confrontational and difficult out of nowhere.
Yeah.
Just for standing up for myself, or trying to at least. And this coach that I spoke to, I told her, I'm not cut out for this. I wanted to be an engineer. I wanted to be a chemical engineer. But I've been working on this vegan business for a while. I'm not sure if I want to continue to do this. I want to do something that makes me happy. It doesn't stress me out so much every day. And once I said that out loud to somebody who could hear it, it kind of became it was like a relief. It was like oh, thank goodness, all of these difficult interactions, being, underestimated, having to have confrontations with the only other woman that I'm trying to have as an ally, all of those other things, if I could carve out a path for myself and maybe create something where that dynamic doesn't exist, I would feel a lot better and maybe be able to provide a safe space for other people.
That just gave me chills, and I think it did because I feel that happens all the time, and I feel especially for, as you mentioned, women of color. And I'm not in your industry, but I can tell you that I've experienced that, and I experience that every single day just with other women. And I think was the woman that you were working with, she wasn't she wasn't a peer, right? She was someone that was more experienced, or up in the ladder a little more. Is that right?
We were peers as far as we had the same kind of level on the corporate team, but she had been in the industry maybe 20 years longer than I had.
Yeah, and see, that sucks because we're all supposed to be there together, and we're supposed to, there's room for everybody at the table, first of all. And the fact that you were then sent to training, to learn how to quote unquote learn how to be a little more non-confrontational is just ridiculous. So I don't know, that story really just it hit me, and it hit me. What was the, so you mentioned that during this time you were at the same time working on this plant-based business, and you talked a little bit about the need. What exactly was the need that you were trying to solve when you decided to go forth and do Smoky Meats?
Yeah, so I was at the time just wanting to there's a protein that's called seitan. It's wheat protein, and it's been a meat replacement for thousands of years. And I learned how to make it. But I also saw that there wasn't that many places that had protein alternatives. I mean, there's black bean burgers and stuff like that at the time, and Impossible Burgers, but there wasn't like a chicken sandwich on a menu anywhere you could go, a vegan chicken sandwich. All of those potential protein options, you can just go and grab a vegan birria taco at any type of place. So I wanted to be able to create a protein that would be a universal type of replacement that would be easy to add to any type of menu, and add it to any type of cuisine. So this particular protein, it can be marinated, fried, smoked, grilled, all of those things. So that was the opportunity that I saw, was a a vegan protein that real chefs could use and cook with, but also home cooks could use and cook with just the way they would cook with any other type of protein or animal protein. And to be able to close that gap, me and my husband's not vegan, but a lot of people have households like us, or, you have one diet and another diet.
Yeah.
If you could have something that could satisfy both diets, then it's kind of a win-win. So those are the opportunities that I saw that I wanted to make sure that I can meet.
Was there ever an aha moment that you had that sort of launched Smoky Meats?
Yeah, I was originally just wanting to. I just wanted to be a person that sold at farmers markets. I thought farmers markets were cool.
They are.
Yeah, but I did a accelerator called Hope in Maine. I have to plug them; they were amazing. The woman who started it is Lisa. She's amazing. She kind of really encouraged me, and and the chefs that she had on her team, they really kind of encouraged me, like, this could be something that could be really significant and help out a lot of people who want to eat plant-based.
Mm-hmm.
And then at the farmers markets, little farmers markets that I did, the interest and the demand was just like, wow. So I would say definitely that experience, and my family, bringing it back home and having my mom and my dad try it. And they were like, wow, like, if I got their approval, if they liked it, they're the toughest critics. They're all meat eaters. That was definitely the aha moment of that first year of just wanting to sell food at farmers markets. It was kind of the proof of concept that this needs to go beyond just a local Saturday morning.
Yeah, so you didn't have any prior experience working in the food industry before you started Smoky Meats, right?
I mean, I worked at Panera Bread in high school.
Well, that is something.
That's about it. So no, not really.
Yeah. And then, you'd mentioned that you would grill, you learned how to barbecue with your dad. And so how were you sort of infusing those flavors from back home into it's pronounced seitan, right?
Yes.
Yeah. How were you doing that?
So every time he would cook, I'd ask him, what kind of seasonings are you putting on that? I think I even called him one time, and I was making like a vegan turkey one year because I wanted to emulate that smoked turkey that he brought to everybody every Thanksgiving. And the pinnacle of Texas barbecue is vegan, is brisket.
Mm-hmm.
So I wanted to make a vegan version of that.
Yeah.
And I just took a lot of the same steps, using pecan wood, like he would, low and slow. So I took the seitan, cooked it that way. I took a lot of trial and error, a lot of research on protein development to make sure that it had the right texture. But I did that, me and my husband, one or two times, and it actually came out delicious. And I was just so happy because it was the first time that I got back to those flavors that I grew up eating.
So you mentioned earlier that you worked with Hope in Maine, which, for the listeners, it's a culinary incubator in Rhode Island.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you? Is this where you sort of perfected the flavors, and like sort of what was your involvement with Hope in Maine, and how did it allow you to get your business off the ground? If you can dive a little deeper into that, because I think that that's a great piece of your story in terms of how you got the business off the ground.
Yeah, so as far as getting it into a packaged product that people could take home and cook and prepare, Um, that was a challenge. I mean, for me, I don't know anything about packaged goods. I don't know anything about behavior and marketing and how people cook or what makes people interested in a product. So one of the chefs there taste tested some of the products. Funny enough, during that same time, that coach that I got sent to with my previous job, the woman who coached me was, when I mentioned to her about the vegan business, she said, "Oh, I have a daughter that's a dietitian who might be interested in some of your products." So I started to send stuff to her for her to taste test and give me feedback about the cookability of it. So turning this thing that I could cook myself at home into something that anybody could cook at home was with the input and the trial and error and being able to package it. I would make vegan bacon at home, but packaging it, making it into something that somebody could take home and cook, all that trial and error happened there. Research and development never really stops, but it really pushed me to getting the products to that space where they could be something people could take home and cook.
I love that. And now we're going to pivot into the fun part, the Smoky Meats. So tell us exactly what Smoky Meats is and how people uh, can purchase it.
Sure. Yeah. So Smoky Meats is a plant-based meat company, meat alternative company. We have we have a focus on vegan barbecue. So we have our vegan brisket. We have andouille sausage in honor of my Louisiana family.
Yeah.
And we also have our vegan chicken to use for your everyday meals. And a variety of other things. We're also going to be launching a few other products, but it really speaks to people who just love good food.
Yeah. What sort of flavors can people find in your products?
I would say if you're a beef lover, the brisket is, it's a naturally smoked. It has that real beefy taste to it. We just season with salt and pepper because that's the way they did it out in Central Texas, Austin style. It's a lot of herbs. It's a lot of really good seasonings. I try to use as many as many like low processed herbs as I can. So you're gonna taste the cumin, the chilies, the sage, the thyme. All of those things are going to come together to give you that essence of the flavor that you would infuse into an animal protein. Because when it comes down to it, people like flavor mostly. It doesn't matter what it is. If you can cook somebody a good meal, whether it's vegan or not, people are going to enjoy it. So that's what you're going to get from Smoky Meats. Something that is unmatched when it comes to flavor.
Yeah, I tried your andouille sausage when I met you at the event we were both attending, and I will agree it was delicious. What would you say are some of your best sellers?
Yeah, right now the andouille sausage is a bestseller. The bacon is a really huge seller. People are really into the DC half smoke.
Yeah.
So since I moved to DC, I was like, I have to give DC something. So, and people have been really loving that. So those have been, and then the brisket is, definitely been the top hitter for sure.
How many iterations did you go through with your flavors before what Smoky Meats is today?
That is probably the most important thing. It was, a lot of trial and error with texture, a lot of trial and error to get the texture right, to get the ingredients right. Even this year, trying to get the process to be able to be more scalable. I would say trial and error has been going on for the entire time we've been in business for the last 3 years. And that push, everything has stages, getting things ready so that people could cook it at home, getting the texture right, making sure that it will be able to be packaged, and then making sure that it could be mass produced. Is kind of the stage that I've been at this year with research and development. So it's always ongoing. But I have sleepless nights of like, oh, I could do this to make it taste better, to make it, cook better. So it's been a lot to get to this the stage of the products that they're at. So probably about 3 years.
That's how you know that you love what you do and that you found something that you're passionate about if it keeps you up at night. So that's a great thing. I mean, it's not a great thing that you are not sleeping, but it's a great thing that that it's something that you constantly think about perfecting. I love when I hear that. No, I like to bring guests on not only to talk about the aha moment that launched their businesses, but also to give us a little bit of education about their industry, because I know a lot of people that are listening may be hardcore meat eaters, and so I wanted to know, like, just from your perspective and some of the research that you've done to perfect your own product, but also your diet in general. Why do you think more people should consider a plant-based diet rather than plant-based meats rather than eating meat from an animal?
I mean, for sure, because of the climate change impact. We're always concerned about climate change. And if you can have something that is a lot more of a less of a carbon impact, then that's something you should at least consider. But in general, American diets have gotten extremely meat heavy. I mean, I look back and I think, wow, it was like breakfast, lunch, and dinner. Every single day, some sort of animal product was involved. And there's a lot of research on health benefits or of going plant based as well. So it's at least something to consider, but also so that you can make food for everybody in your household. Increasingly, the biggest surprise since I've been in business is how many people who might be hardcore meat eaters, but they have a child in their house that's vegan, or a spouse that's vegan, or friends that they have to cook for that are vegan. Even if you don't consider going plant-based yourself, at least try to have things around so that when you do so you can have a more inclusive household when you have your family members and friends over.
What sort of health benefits have you noticed in yourself since becoming plant-based?
Definitely feel just in general like less heavy. I think when I first went plant-based, I didn't know what to eat. So I lost 30 pounds and it was an unhealthy amount of 30 pounds that I lost. But incorporating a plant-based protein into my diet, there's a lot of people who are very pro eating mushrooms as a meat alternatives, but they don't have any protein. Seitan is 27 grams of protein, but our products are 27 grams of protein per serving. So it really keeps me full when I do have a meal, but I also have noticed cutting out dairy has been wonders for my skin. It's pretty vain, but it just is, your skin will tell you if you're having an inflammatory response to something. And all the inflammation that I was getting, all the breakouts and things, I had no idea that it was correlated to consuming dairy. And once I cut it out, it was just night and day as far as my skin and how my body just in general responded. Every single day, and I just had more energy. 33 now, and I feel great.
How are you funding Smoky Meats currently?
Currently, it's a lot of self-investment. We have gotten a few grants. We've done a little Kickstarter a couple years ago. But we've also done another accelerator here in DC, which has cut down on the production costs. But we're really trying to fundraise in the next coming year. So definitely just trying to keep a balance between how we how much money we put into our business. I think I forget one of the people on Shark Tank. He did a really interesting speech about how you can run your business at a kind of a lean cost wise. So we really try to do that, run as lean as we possibly can, and only get things when we absolutely need it. So that's what we're kind of doing right now. But a lot of it's just grants, reaching out to the LEDC here in DC and finding ways to get funding that way.
We see a lot of entrepreneurs in many spaces in the food industry. I think entrepreneurship in general is continuing to increase. But how do you think your experience working in science and working in corporate America, how do you think that's sort of helping with the success of Smoky Meats?
I think ultimately, production is production. I always say that. So when I figured out my process, making it scalable, I think I had a little bit of advantage there, having a background as an engineer. I think I have more of a kind of 1,000-foot view of my business, having been in corporate America, seeing all the moving pieces at the bottom. I think helps me to, think more about kind of all the same roles that I would see at a chemical plant. I kind of embody in some way, supply chain, operations, engineering, it's all those same type of roles. And it's really helps me to draw on that experience, but also expanded some of my knowledge and experience in those areas. Mm. So it's been kind of a feedback loop.
Yeah. Yeah. So it wasn't all negative. It stood for something.
For sure.
What's next for Smoky Meats?
We are launching a pop-up cafe here in DC. So it'll just be we're going to take off the Smoky. It's going to be Mmmeats, because we're going to have soups and pastas and baked goods, all entirely vegan. It's going to be at the National Union Building in January. We're trying to get into more restaurants, get into more stores. And also we want to unlock the mystery of seitan as a meat replacement. So teaching people how to make it themselves, teaching restaurants how to make it themselves, demystifying plant-based alternatives. Because the first thing I get is, what is it? What is it made out of? We want to show you.
Do you ever think that of hosting maybe a cooking class with seitan?
Yes, definitely. So after the pop-up in March, when that's done, we're going to be definitely doing seitan cooking classes.
Okay, well, I will be there, so I will be hitting you up because I would love to join. No, but this was awesome. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I want to play a quick rapid fire game if you have time before I let you go.
Sure.
Awesome. Okay, this is the fun part. What is your favorite meal to cook for yourself?
I would say probably Chipotle enchiladas.
Oh, that... Chelsea, we might have to become friends so that I can come over and then you can cook this for me.
Yes, please. I love cooking for people.
I love that. What's your favorite animal?
It's definitely cows now. There's a Rosie's Farm Sanctuary. We went out there. They rescue cows from slaughterhouses. So every time I go there, I just get to be at one with cows. So it's just peaceful for me. So definitely cows.
I love cows and I love horses as well. I think they have the same energy.
Yeah, for sure.
Guilty pleasure.
I would say the little the little times that I can go and grab a vegan croissant. My husband and I got married in France, and there's a place here in Newmarket that has vegan croissants. And I'm just like, I can make breakfast myself, but let me just go downstairs and grab a croissant.
No, that's it. You guys live next to Union Market?
We live in Union Market, yeah.
Oh my God. Yeah, that's a guilty pleasure in itself.
Yes, there's so much good food over there. Yeah,
so
for sure.
much. I love it over there. What's your go-to song?
Right now, there's this song. It's so funny that we're having this conversation. We were just talking about moving back to Texas, and we decided against it. So there's a song called "Goodbye Texas" that I've been obsessed with.
Oh my God. Well, this isn't a rapid fire question, but I was going to ask, like, you said you lived in Union Market. For the listeners, it's a very urban area in DC. Lots going on there, busy, congested. I was going to say, do you miss sort of being in the rural areas and all of the animals?
Definitely. That's why I like to volunteer at the sanctuaries when I get some time too. It's just my little break from the city to get some air and some peace. So at some point, I will have my open space and my animals, as many as I can get. At some point, I've already prepared my husband. This is his future.
No, I know. I'm from Pittsburgh originally, and Pittsburgh's like a smaller city, but I love the city, but I will have chickens. Like, I will have 4. And it's like crazy because it's like you can't have chickens in the city. So I have to make a decision. Where am I going to move? Where am I going to settle? Because I will have a farm of some sort in my life. But no, I appreciate that. I appreciate your answer.
Do it.
What's your last good read?
I read a book called The Final Girl. I'm a big like horror movie type of person, so it's been like Halloween season. So it's like a group therapy session for a bunch of girls who are the final girl and all of their kind of horror stories, and then a killer starts to pick off all of them. So it's pretty interesting.
Has that been turned into a show or a movie? I don't know why that sounds so familiar.
I don't think so, but it should. It was really good.
That's amazing. And bucket list item. This is the last question.
I would love to go to Malaysia or Singapore. That's definitely my bucket list. Yeah, that's probably it. Singapore, go eat a bunch of Singaporean food.
Yum.
And then hop over to Malaysia and have a good time.
No, I love that. Chelse, thank you so much for talking to me today. This was awesome.
Thank you. I'm glad we got a chance to connect. This was fantastic. What a great show that you have.
Thank you, Chelse. That's it for this week's episode of A Bright Idea. Tune in each week as we interview entrepreneurs to find out their aha moments that launched their businesses. Today's episode featured Chelse Prejean, founder of Smoky Mmmeats. You can support Chelse by going to her website at Smoky Mmmeats, that's 3 M's, Smoky, Meats, MEATS.com, or following her on social media at Smoky Mmmeats. Chelse makes her products at a small business food accelerator called Union Kitchen. If you're in the DC area, you can buy Smoky Mmmeats products at any Union Kitchen located around the DC metro area. We're building a community of support here on A Bright Idea podcast, so follow Smoky Mmmeats on social media, give a review, and tell all of your friends. Until next week, I'm Amber Key.